Hello, hello, welcome. Happy Wednesday. We are so excited to have you here. Hopefully you've made it to the right place. Welcome to Unlearning with me, Lindsey T. Jackson, and today we are unlearning DEI is the villain. We have an amazing panel for you, and just like all things that are great about live television, we just found out that one of our panelists was whisked away to go support a sister who was beginning the birthing process. It's not to say that you're not very important. To me, you are very important. But today, you are not more important than the birthing process of Justice's sister. So we're going to roll with it because we still have an amazing panel to present to you. So welcome. Welcome. Let's find our way here. Who am I? Some of you might be your first time here. My name is Lindsey T. Jackson, and I am called America's DEI teacher, although I'm not sure I'm allowed to be called that anymore. So I'll find out after this session today, this episode. Maybe I'll take on a new name like Germany's DEI teacher. I don't know. We're rolling with it. It's in flux. We'll see. I serve in the role of founder and lead executive at LTHJ Global, which I do have something to tell you all. If you could just lean in a little closer. This is hard for me to admit, but I feel like today's the day. I have to have this honest moment with all of you. And that is that, oh, I'm getting hot. Despite the fact that the company is named after me and that we have grown to be a national organization, I was in fact a DEI hire. See what I did there? See what I did? Let's take a deep breath. Taking a deep inhale in, finding your way here, hopefully with some snacks and maybe a kombucha on the side. And exhaling out. Let's meet this great panel. Joining us, Jonathan Hyman is a shareholder and employment and labor practice group leader at Wickens, Herzer, Panza, with decades of experience in management, side labor, and employment law. John brings invaluable insights to our discussion on DEI's evolving landscape. Next to him today is Kimfer, Flanery. I always have to, just when I see your face, it makes me smile. Kimfer is passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion in women in business. She is the founder of Inclusion Equals, a social enterprise focused on the IDEA, IDEA, inclusion equals diversity plus equity plus accessibility. To build culture from the inside out, as well, she serves in the role of CEO at the F-Bomb Breakfast Club. All the F-bombers in the room say, woo, woo. There you are, a peer support community for women, femmes, and gentle thems who are company founders and business owners. Let's get them up on to the virtual stage. Kimfer, John, it's such a pleasure to have you here.
Awesome to be here. Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I mean, bringing John in from another city, Kimfer, we had to get her back from Davos, even here, sick, and still she's here showing up to talk about, I don't know, there's something been going on in the news. I'm not sure if anybody else has seen it. There's been a series of executive orders coming out recently, and all I can make of it personally is that apparently I am a horrible person who's been doing horrible things in the world, teaching people about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm pretty sure I should be shot. Was that your making, John Kimfer?
Yeah, that kind of sums it up. It's yeah, it's I mean, I guess as the white guy on the panel, I guess it's a great day to be a white guy. I don't know, but not great for everybody else. So I think we need to break it all down so people understand exactly what's going on and what it means.
Yeah, yeah.
Similar to
I guess
you,
that
Lindsay,
makes you,
right?
yeah, well, I think that makes John the DEI hire today, right? White guy
That's what
on
it
the
looks like. That's what it looks like. Yeah.
yes, yes. And
Yes.
we're happy to have an ally. We're happy to have an ally.
You know, this doesn't work without us, right? Like,
Hmm.
I don't, without I'm going to keep calling myself the white guy, but without the white guys, like, this doesn't work. So, I am really happy to be doing the work, and to be here. So,
Yeah, well, say more about that because as far as I understand by reading the news, you're under attack. Like all of this, from Beyonce winning a country, album award to Kendrick Lamar at the Super Bowl, like white men are losing out and being threatened by everything. Is that the case?
I think insecure white men are being threatened, but I think those of us who are secure in who we are and what we do, um, I am happy to share the wealth and happy to open the room to everybody and happy to give opportunities, and to level the playing field for those who need it to get their foot in the door. So I don't feel threatened. I don't feel like I'm being tread upon or stepped over or stepped on. I think the diversity of opinions, and the diversity of viewpoints, I think helps everybody. So I say welcome everybody in.
Mm. Kimfer, what is DEI? Let's start at the very beginning. What is this DEI and this wokeism and critical race theory? It sounds very critical and nasty. What is
I
it?
mean, of course it's nasty. I mean,
Mm,
it's nasty because when I would say we are in a structured situation, it's been built purposely, right? So when a common group feel as if they got what they were getting and now they have to share that, it feels like something is being taken away. Even though really nothing is being taken away, they still have the same kind of power, same kind of opportunity. But the fact that now, did we just have to give someone else a cookie as well, right? But really, DEI, I think why it's so easy to villainize DEI because it's just letters, right?
mm,
Letters. When you throw acronyms at it, like also critical race theory, it's not like they're saying that, it's just letters. And so then it's easy to forget what it is versus say it's about diversity, about equity, about inclusion, right? And so when you start breaking out each of those words, that's when people have to absorb it, right?
mm,
Diversity, again, is about the various ways in which who we are, right? That's demographics. Diverse is demographics. And so to say like anti-DEI, anti-diversity, that means you're anti-demographics. Like,
yeah.
okay, that makes no sense. And then when you take about the E, the equity, it's to say, well, why would we want equitable access for everyone? Because then, again, my two cookies,
Mm,
now you get two cookies? Are you kidding me? That makes no sense, right? This is where people get kind of in this space. And then you have, say, inclusion. Like, inclusion is where, like, I'm sorry, but when it comes to DEI, there are a lot of things that everyone every day gets to experience and gets to enjoy. So if you think about inclusion, um, think about things like access ramps.
mm,
That's DEI. Oh, we don't want that? Do we not want that? Right? Um, what about even things like parental pay? I know we
mm,
don't have it as a nationwide, but that's DEI, or when you have health needs and your company gives you time off. A lot of these things are considered DEI. So to say like anti-DEI, you're basically saying anti-me, anti-establishment, anti-everything, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've been very successful in branding DEI as a four-letter word. And
yeah,
so now, the marketing campaign has branded DEI as this evil thing. And, as a result now, when people hear DEI, their brain goes to, oh, this is bad, we got to get rid of it, but they have no idea what it means. They have no, they have they hear DEI and they think, oh, well, DEI means like race-based hiring quotas, which it doesn't, right? DEI means you're hiring a less qualified black candidate for a position over a more qualified white candidate, and that's not what it is. Um, and so, but they've branded it so that to scare us into thinking that it's something we should be afraid of. Um, and so they've done the work to make this big bad evil thing when nobody understands what it means. And so it's incumbent upon us who do understand what it means to get out and educate people to what it means so they understand that it's not what people are telling you it is. And this is why DEI is something that we all should actually embrace and not vilify.
Yeah. You said something so interesting there. You said they. And I want to be sure that, whenever we talk about
Republicans, MAGA.
theys, whomever, yeah, expand on that. Who is they? We don't want conspiracy theories. We want receipts. Who is
Oh,
they?
I mean, they is Donald Trump and the people that occupy his orbit, the Steve Bannons and the Stephen Millers. It is Fox News and the right-wing media. It is the right-wing think tanks like the Heritage Foundation that have written a 900-page instruction manual on this stuff called Project 2025. So when I say they, let's be very clear, that's who they are. And right now, they also control the White House, they control the Supreme Court, and they control both houses of Congress. And so there is a definite agenda being put forth by those in power in this country to um, vilify diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to eliminate it from our businesses, from our workplaces, from the country. And again, and they're doing it, I think, under the smokescreen of hiding behind the acronym, so that people don't really understand what they are actually trying to get rid of, and that
Mm.
my perception is, they're trying to make 2025 more like 1955. And I think if people I think of I think if people understood that, I think the large kind of swath of the centrist, the middle of the country, middle being on the political spectrum, not like geographically, on the middle on the political spectrum, I think would not support the things that they think that would not support what they're actually supporting now because they
Yes.
just don't know.
Yes. John Kimfer and I wanted to actually share something, and this comes from a really great newsletter by Khalil Green. And this, interestingly, was his newsletter that just went out. It arrived in my inbox this morning. And this is an example of what John and Kimfer are talking about. So many people do not know the name Christopher F. Rufo, and I'm going to encourage you to go and do your research later. But in this series of Twitter, now X post, Christopher writes, we have successfully frozen their brand, quote unquote, critical race theory, which critical race theory is very much a legal term, but into the public conversation and are steadily driving up negative perceptions. We will eventually turn it toxic as we put all of the various cultural insanities under that brand category. The goal, Christopher writes, is to have the public read something crazy, his language, in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory, in quotes. We have decodified the term and will recodify it to annex the entire range of cultural constructions that are unpopular with Americans. So what, John, you're talking about here is this is very thoughtful, methodical engineering, right? Engineering, we use that word in the sense of to build something. And in this case, it was to build, to codify in the perception of millions of Americans that there was a threat to them, and that threat was critical race theory or DEI.
Yeah, and this they've played the long game. They, right? The same they have played the long game here. This has been methodical strategic planning for the last, 8 years, maybe longer, um, to get to the point where they have the country, a majority of the country, thinking the way they want it to think. They have the power structure in place in Washington to make the changes they want to change, and now they're reaping the benefits of all the groundwork that they have laid over the last 4, 5, 8, however many long years.
Which, I don't know about you, Kimfer, but I just keep like throwing my hands up because I realize I'm just not really a focused person. Like the other day, my friend had to remind me that I was upset with them. And I was like, I am? What'd you do? And they were like, well, you obviously don't remember. So why would I tell you? I don't play the long game. Uh, what is, what, why would this work? Why would making something like DEI a villain be successful in this current socio-political climate?
Well, as you know, I approach everything in diversity and inclusion with a brain-based science behind
Mm,
it. The sad part is that human brain can hold on to fear much easier than they can with happiness.
mm,
Happiness is a little bit elusive versus fear really can dictate your fight or flight. So it really impacts, right? So when you use that tactic is going to always win faster
mm,
than if you are doing the good news from the good news approach, right? And with that, if we're thinking about it from the perspective of, I mean, he said it clearly. We're branding this, we're making it into a very specific way and approach. And that long game to do that, it's going to stick with people, not only because fear drives more than when everything is good. And when you
mm,
have a fear base, then it allows your human base instincts to come out and say they're the blame. They're
mm,
the ones to blame for all the plight that I have. That blame game is so much easier than to say, hey, you know what? There's a system in place to make that happen. And so that's really why that it works so well. And secondarily, it's really tragic that it has become a political thing, right?
yeah.
So this game that's being played, they are using politics into it, saying now that unfortunately they have taken over the Republican, the idea of a politic um, which way you are. If you are a Republican, this is where it's at, right? And that's unfortunate for those Republicans if you're thinking about it from a traditional, what is like, how do I drive policy? Um, that's what's happening here. And so because of that, not only have they taken over the language, they're also taking over certain aspects of our politics. And
Mm,
so, and that's making it even harder for people to go, well, oh, I'm a Republican, so then that must be also, am I that? Am I this? Right? And so it's making it that much harder. And with that, what's happening then is it's easier when you don't have to play by the rules.
Yeah.
So when I say them, for me, I'm not talking about the Republicans holistically. I'm talking about these very specific people who have co-opted the Republican group, like John mentioned, all the names. They have decided to say, we don't have to play it fairly. We don't have to play by the rules. And when you don't have to play by the rules, it's easier. It's way easier to go target and do the things and create mayhem, right? And so that's really what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah. I want to stick with this language of easy and hard. Is it easy within the political sphere within the United States of America for me to say, well, I subscribe to liberal views and I voted Democratic, therefore I am not uh, aiding and abetting this moment that we now find ourselves in, right? If there's anything right now, what I've been seeing when I am speaking to various clients and watching their varied responses right now, I would say, and I'm going to use a big word here, the ones I am most disappointed in are those that talk a good game, but are proving right now that their actions do not back what they've had to say. How does, I call it the liberal mystique, right? Oh, I'm a good liberal, but I am so quick to comply in this moment. You're both giggling. John, what's coming up for you?
I mean, look, this is I I have I'm a student of history. I was a history major in college. Um, and I've done a lot of thinking about the parallels between what we're seeing now and what happened in Germany in
Mm,
1933. And there are a
mm,
tremendous amount of parallels from the the victim blaming. In Germany, it was the Jews. Now we're seeing it with blacks and racial minorities, transgender people are
mm.
who's being blamed for the problems, the problems in our society. Um, to the but I think more to your point, Lindsay, it's the complacency that people and the unwillingness to push and the unwillingness to push back, right? You see the um, Democratic House leadership is apologizing for a lack of decorum during the not the state whatever Trump's you know speech was last night, and apologizing for the lack of decorum that was shown by the president. He does it. I mean, that's where we are. Like he's going to get up and spew nonsense for 90 to 120 minutes. And people aren't allowed to, or we're going to take issue with people not having decorum and calling them out on its bullshit. It's that kind of complacency and that kind of refusal to resist, refusal to push back, refusal to stand for what's right, which is largely what led Hitler to rise in 1933. There was a complacency, there was an appeasement, and we're seeing a lot of that now, and it's scary as hell.
Yes, yes, yes. Kim, are you seeing it within your client base as well? A shift?
Yeah, I think I'll come back to that. So what was really fascinating, because I was in Davos when so for those of you, that's a World Economic Forum that happens annually in Davos, Switzerland. And I was there when the inauguration was happening. I was there while Trump also uh, signed in to speak to the World Economic Forum and all of that. The whole idea at the World Economic Forum is about collaboration. How do we work together from a geopolitical sense, from economy sense, from all the, from environment to everything. So how do we as global commoners, come together? And what was really fascinating being there as an American, and getting perspective from my colleagues and friends that are global. And
Mm,
it was amazing to John, to your point, how many of the people from Europe said, this is literally when people ask, why did the Jews not flee?
mm,
Why they did not flee? Like, yes, some folks did initially, but by the time it became horrific, people could not flee anymore. And they said it was literally like for some of them, it's like that's how we're seeing the US right now.
mm.
The fascinating thing that we're watching happening.
We're so conditioned in our democracy after 250 years to say, well, that can't happen here,
Yeah, you
right?
can't.
We have separation of powers and we have checks and balances, and that can't happen here. But we're seeing an erosion of those checks and balances almost by the day. I'm watching very closely to see the Supreme Court today. Uh, uh, ordered the administration to release USAID funding, and so I am watching very closely to see what happens with that because we are. The reality is, if Trump decides from any law that he doesn't want to follow it, the courts are powerless to stop him because he controls the Justice Department. He has a beholden attorney general in Pam Bondi, and he's going to tell Hertz the way it works legally is court issues an order, someone doesn't follow that order, contempt motions filed, court issues a contempt sanction, and then if the rule of law was working the way it was supposed to work, if somebody didn't abide by a contempt sanction, the U.S. Marshal Service would go out under the direction of the U.S. Attorney, the Attorney General's office, and they'd arrest the person and they'd jail him for not following a contempt order. Our attorney general is not going to do that with this president, and so we are
Mm.
really sitting on the edge of the cliff as to whether or not our rule of law is going to hold, and and that goes for everything in our country, and it's really scary. And in Kimfer, to your point, like nobody left because they didn't perceive it as a real threat, and then by the time they saw the threat, it was too late to leave. Um, we're not that far from being a reality here, and I, it sounds hyperbolic and it sounds crazy, but if you understand kind of the mechanics of how all this works in the government, we're really not that far away. Democracy works on faith, right? And right
Yeah.
now, there's not a lot of that left in this country. So
Yeah. Yeah, and to bring it back, so again, this talk isn't about like how do we make you all fear. This the thing that I want to do is the
Don't lie to them. Of course it is.
it
Yes, it
is,
is.
yes, it's
I'll,
fearful,
I'll,
but what
I'll,
happens when you're in fear, that's where apathy can come in pretty quickly.
mm,
That's why I want to make sure this is about like realism. This is what used to be fantasy. People who used to say like that's fantasy, that's not going to happen. What I think John and I'm trying to say is no, no, that is reality right now. That is reality currently. And because of that, we need to be aware of that and not treat it as if it could be fantasy, not
mm,
treat it as if it's could not possibly happen. The sooner we, I think, understand, yes, it can happen. Yes, we are in that reality right now. Okay. Once we have that knowledge, then we can now move away from the apathy. Apathy is so easy to do because apathy happens when you're overwhelmed. Again, back to the brain. You are overwhelmed when you feel like your circle of control, your sphere of control is out, like you have no longer control of anything. The more you have this idea of atrophying yourself into
mm,
yourself and going, I can't do anything. It's too big. So the more we can start saying, like, what are the little things that we can start taking control? So then we feel like our control gets bigger, our circle of influence gets bigger. So that way we can then not be focused on this area of concern that we have no, control over. I'm not in law. I'm not a lawyer, but you know what? I have I have the ability to donate the money to the right places right now. We used to
Mhm.
say, Lindsay, I don't know if you remember this. So we used to say like, oh, if you just throw money at it, that's lazy way of doing DEI allyship. But you know what? That's not necessarily true. If you have social economic access, throw money at it to the people who know what they're doing. I mean, I can't. I don't. I'm not someone in legal scenarios.
Mm.
Why not put money towards where it needs to go, ACLU and to various other, places. And then if you have time and you have the availability of time on your hands, like for me, I get to dictate my time because I own my own business. That means
Mhm.
I have the time to volunteer or to go and do the calls, do the things that I have can, take the control back. And if you don't have those, then you can also then still have an availability and the opportunity to support people who are in the communities that are being impacted very harsh right now, right? So for me, like I literally have a very close friend. They are fleeing to go to Norway because of their transgender
Mm.
status. So for them, their family, they wanted to make sure that they were safe. And so literally have applied and they're moving themselves physically. And so for me, I'm there trying to make sure how can I be there for them emotionally? How can I be there from in any kind of structural way, if at all possible? That's my job as someone who can be an ally and support for them. So there are many ways that we can take small controls so that way you don't fall into like,
Mm.
you know, the fuck? I don't know, like that kind of moment. That's what we want to get out of is trying to take it back. And that's why I was saying this isn't about like we're trying to scare you straight. That's not it. What it is like know that this is a reality, can be a reality, not a fantasy. And because of about that, let's figure out how can we then move? How do we move? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and just to bring it back to the topic of the day and of diversity, equity, inclusion, like so to your point about your transgender friend, like we have like the law of the United States is transgender is a protected status. It is Title VII protects the Bostock case said it clearly. Gender identity is a protected status. It is sex discrimination, right? That's the law as pronounced by the Supreme Court. Then you have Trump that comes in with his executive order and says, no, we're getting rid of all protections for transgender people. It's been, if you go to the EEOC's website, their acting commissioner has very strong policy statements. She's for years spoken out against transgender individuals, and has policy statements or things she's written on that are now on the EEOC's website against the rights of transgender individuals. Everything on the EEOC's website that speaks about legal protections for transgender individuals all says, yeah, this is here now, but it's under review in light of Trump's executive orders. They are, through executive fiat, trying to wipe those protections out of our law books. Despite the fact that our Supreme Court said, yeah, that's what the law means. That's what the law says. Um, and the same with um, corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. The Justice Department has said we're going to target illegal DEI. Well, what the hell does that mean, right? If they're talking about racial quotas in hiring, that was illegal on January 19th, just as it was illegal on January 20th. You can't hire someone because they're white, black, brown, green, yellow, purple, polka dotted, whatever. You can't. It's an illegal hiring practice. So what is an illegal DEI program? I mean, what are they talking about? They're not talking about quotas. Are they talking about opening up pipelines to get more diverse candidates into hiring funnels? They're talking about resource groups within a business, right? To make um, Black people or brown people or women or LGBTQ plus workers feel more included. So like what are they talking about? Are they talking about, we've seen on the one hand they say, well, we're not talking about things like Black History Month celebrations on the one hand, but on the other hand, the Justice Department is saying we're getting rid of all that within the Justice Department, right? So is it one hand not communicating with the other, or are they intentionally trying to confuse us to try to
Mm.
scare businesses is into, well, we don't know what to do, so we're gonna hedge our bets because businesses are by nature risk averse, and so we're gonna hedge our bets and take the most conservative view possible of all this, so we don't get in the crosshairs of anybody.
John, when you say that, I wonder for the HR leader on the call, the CEO, ED, ops person on the call, I think there is a lot of fear, to use this word, that we know is present right now, and a lot of confusion. I guess my question is, having both your legal mind here, Kimfer, you're, steering so many organizations. When I start acquiescing or, saying, oh, I'll just change the language in our statement. Oh, I'll just change the language in this, that, and the other. When we start moving the line in order to keep ourselves safe or to fly under the radar, I hear this a lot. We want to try to fly under the radar. At what point am I moving the line so much that I might as well have just said, I give in from the beginning?
Yeah, I don't. If this is something you believe in, I don't think you should move the line. I think you should draw a line in the sand and say, this is what we stand for, this is what we believe in, and we're not going to let somebody bully us into doing something different. This is who we are as an organization. This is what our core values are. We believe in having a diverse workforce. We believe in opening up opportunities for diverse individuals and individuals from marginalized communities. We believe in making them feel welcome, right? And when did that become controversial, right? When did it
Mm.
become controversial for someone to feel wanted and welcome anywhere, right? But now it
Yeah.
is, right? So we're gonna have programs to allow individuals to feel, of all communities, to feel welcome within our business, within our workforce. This is who we are, and this is what we believe in, and we're not going to be bullied into moving that line so we don't get in someone's crosshairs, or we don't end up as a talking point on Fox News or Newsmax, or on Twitter or whatever. So I don't think you move the line unless that line is something that you don't really believe in, and then what do you stand for? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do and exercise with my clients is how risk averse are you? Okay, so it's
Mm.
from completely avoidant to fearless, right? And it's not because every organization needs to be completely fearless. That's not what I'm saying. You shouldn't be avoiding completely, but it's not about the fact that your organization has to be completely fearless. What it is that line that John's talking about, that's what I'm asking them to figure out. Where are you?
Mm.
Where is your line? Will you know when you've gone past that line somehow? And will you stay with it? Does that make
Mm.
sense? Because not every organization, so the way that I explain what fearless is, this is the description I use is when you are bold, unafraid to be proactive, openly advocating for DEI, right? That your principles, and you're willing to challenge the environments, regardless of any opposition, regardless of any reputational loss or any
Mm.
kind of funding loss, right? So that's what fearless means. Not all organizations are meant to be there per se. So I usually put people who are there, the advocacy groups, that's where they typically land in fearless, right? Human rights campaign, that's where they're like, even if they're losing funding, they're not going to be changing their advocacy. That's where they
Yeah.
land. So not all companies needs to be in that place. They could be in a place where it's more pragmatic, right? And so the question why I ask these things to clients is to say, where are you? What is causing you to be, like avoidant or reluctant or tentative before you can go into pragmatic or fearless? That's what I want to know. So that way, when something like this happens, something major happens, will you swing?
Mhm.
Right? Do you know why you stand for what you do? And because when it comes to, I think this is where the push and pull comes in from place like where John lives and where I live, right? So part of my advice to clients is my job is to, oftentimes, legal counsel might be letting you know, hey, here are the legal ramifications. We might put you towards a little bit less in risk. My goal then to the client are to say like, okay, so that's advice coming from your legal. Are you willing to go out and fight it
Yes.
with your legal? That's my job as the DEI consultant. Legal is doing their job saying, hey, you might get litigation because if you continue to stick with this. My job is to say, okay, are you willing to go and fight it
Mm.
and take that litigation, like in or litigate it and take whatever it is coming at you. We need to find out what that is
I have that.
before you're there, right?
I have that conversation with my clients too, because
Yeah.
I think my role is I think my role as legal counsel is a couple of things. It's right, advise you of the risk, right, and then figure out where if you're comfortable taking that risk and where on that spectrum you lie, right? Because you can fall all the way back and do like what Target did and get rid
Mm.
of their DEI programs in total. And now, by the way, we're going to find out how committed they are because the boycott is going to start, the 40-day boycott, and so we'll find out how committed they are to that pullback if it actually starts to impact their bottom line and their share price. Um, so you can fall all the way back, or there is a range of risks, a range where you can fall in the risk spectrum, and so we'll get you up to the line of this is the line of legal versus illegal, lawful versus unlawful. We'll take you up to that line, and we can even push it a little if you want to understand like that cost, right? That there's a cost to that, right? So there's a potential. You're gonna have to pay me. You might have to pay other people, right? There is a certain cost to pushing that line, but I absolutely have that conversation with my clients. I'm not gonna challenge them because I think this is an issue that is worth challenging businesses on.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something about that for many of us, at least in the context of the United States of America, and I would say in particular for my leaders that exist in uh, high amounts of agency, right? So when we're talking about agent rank versus target rank, I'm using Leticia Nieto's addressing model here, right? Cis, white, male, Christian Judeo, able bodied, upper middle class, right? What are the opportunities to actually test if I'm willing to stand up for my stated values?
I mean, here's a perfect example, right? So back pre 2020, before the Supreme Court said that Title VII implicitly included protections for LGBTQ plus individuals, I strongly pushed every business I work with to include LGBTQ protections for their employees and their policies and handbooks because it's the right thing to do. Um, I lost clients over that because
Mm.
they said that's not what we believe in. I'm not going to, that if that's not what the law requires, I'm not going to do it. Right. And I lost clients over that. I think, look, I'm not, if that's not what you believe in, then I'm probably not the lawyer for you. And that's fine. Go find someone that will tell you that's okay to do that. So I think that's certainly one way to test it is to say the laws here, the laws here, we think from a business standpoint, from a what's right and wrong standpoint, we think you should be here, right? The law's a floor, not a ceiling. Let's bump you up above the floor and push, and let's see where your comfort level is.
Yeah, I want to dig in on that, John. There's no reason of what I know of you that you would be compelled to do that. So what is it in you that has been nurtured or fostered that you were personally prepared to lose clients?
It's just I gotta sleep at night. I don't know. Like
Mm.
I'm not gonna if you want to be discriminatory towards people because of who they are, I don't want to be, I don't want to be a part of that. That's blood money to me. I don't want to be a part of that. So go find, go pay a lawyer that will tell you what you want to hear, but that's just not me. I don't know if it was the way I was raised or the way or just what I believe my moral compass and what's right and wrong. I don't know, but I'm I have a certain view of the way the world's supposed to work, and if you don't align with that view, I'm happy to send you go find someone who better matches your worldview.
Mm. What about for you, Kimfer? What's the thing that even when it's not popular, and we could take this, I could beautifully argue this from the other side of this entire conversation, right? That's debating skills 101. But what keeps you aligned to act your stated morals and values?
I mean, for me personally, is that I really, really believe in, and also that I like to instill in my child, is that we have to see the humanity in everyone.
Mm.
As soon as we lose sight of the humanity in someone, this is when we can do the blame game really easily. This is when we go, it's you, not me. It's your fault, not my fault. And so, even in this scenario, as much as I find it despicable of what's happening from in this political circus that's happening right now, if I stop thinking about those that are on the opposition to me and thinking about them as just them and other and everything else, I will never understand why they're thinking that way, where and how we can make that bridge to happen to see each other's humanity, because that's why like this really polarized scenario that's happening right now is that there are talks that are not happening because
Mm.
you're wrong, I'm right. You and we think of it in this way. I think I heard where was it that I heard when they said when you hear someone say, I cannot imagine how, why you would have voted for Trump. I cannot possibly understand why you would have voted for him. That is a point when you have lost your your ability to
Mm.
see their humanity and what
Mm.
it is in their needs that has been getting met to vote for someone like him. You have stopped that conversation mentally. And I wish I can remember who I heard this from, because I would love to like make sure that they get the uh you know
Quote.
vote for that. But that really like sat with me,
Mm.
really sat with
Yeah.
me, especially
Yeah.
when I think of myself as someone who really need to think of others. Like humanity is such a huge part of it. And this, I think part of it has a lot to do with my intersections. I mean, I grew up in John, this is information you don't know, but I grew up in an orphanage in South Korea. So I'm nameless, faceless, you know, homeless pretty much, in that scenario. And someone who experienced what it means to not have power, that have no autonomy, that has none of that. And then got rescued to being adopted into the US, and then went through the farm crisis in the 80s. So we lost everything yet again. And so for me, talking about intersections that we can go in and out of, like I felt that. I know what that looks like and feels like. And my life could have been very different
Mm.
at even one little moment could have shifted, right? And so for me, I think about it in the sense of like if others weren't able to see my humanity, where would I have been? And this is where I think is really challenging right now, too, that I implore to anyone that's going through this scenario is I want you to think about what are you willing to do for someone else to see their humanity? What happens if we, this US, turns into back in the day, Germany? Are you willing to sacrifice yourself to bring someone into safety into your home? Right? Are you willing to do that? And I realize that that's a really huge ask because it changes depending on, I have a child now. Am I willing to do that to bring someone else, which means then I'm putting them in harm? But these are like theoretical questions we have to ask ourselves to know where is our risk aversion?
Yeah, I think what's
Where
become
is our
apparent.
personal risk? Yeah.
Now, I was going to say, I think what's become apparent, particularly over the last month and a half, is there is a lack of a glaring lack of empathy that I think has become endemic in the United States, and I think it's twofold. I think it's a lack of empathy for marginalized communities. It allows people to push politics of keeping people down, but to your point, Kimfer, I think it's also a lack of empathy and understanding the position of others, why others think the way they think, and that comes from both sides of the aisles, and it comes from, I think when the history book of the this part of the 21st century is written, I think a lot of the blame is going to lie for where we are today is going to lie at the feet of cable news and social media because they make money by keeping us here instead of us working towards being here. But we should be able to sit down at our local and have a beer with someone with a different viewpoint, and talk to them. You don't have to agree with them, but understand where they come from, and that those small steps is maybe that'll be what heals us. I don't know, but because we have a lot of healing left, to do. But yeah, but it's empathy is the word I keep coming back to, both in pushing down and then pushing apart.
And what's really fascinating is this idea of positive discourse. We've lost we've lost that in somehow in our society to have positive discourse, right? You can have conflict and positive conflict. You can disagree, but to have conversation over positive discourse, it's a skill that we have lost as humanity, as humans in this, especially in our society anyway. And this idea of like, I love the idea of empathy and is an important aspect. One, I would say I would layer one over on top of that. And I don't know if someone is specifically quoted in this, but empathy sometimes is really hard because if you have not experienced it before, it's really hard to say, like, I can really imagine myself in that, which is why compassion comes in. You can have compassion for others without understanding or having knowing what that is. So I would say that's another layer. If you are able to empathize. If you cannot, bring compassion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're able to empathize. If you cannot, bring compassion.
It's so interesting as you all are, bringing this and making it so present for all of us. It's by no means the same. And yet I found myself out walking T'Challa, and I was thankful for the years of DEI training that I have either learned from, participated in, or facilitated myself, because I caught myself feeling frustrated that my industry, from where I draw my career, from where my company is very much, in that market, I felt myself spiraling into a woe is me moment. But then I caught myself by going, let me get curious about how this might be similar to the experience that somebody has when a Democratic leader, for example, gets up and talks about we have to end fracking, or we have to end anything pertaining to coal. I'm from Pennsylvania, so you're going to understand that is a big industry in Pennsylvania, right? And so what must, or when we're talking about environmental protections, and it feels as though somebody very distant to you is impacting your livelihood. And then I went one further, reminding myself that while I may be a DEI hire, many of you have heard me talk about before, right? I started college when I was 15. I had 3 degrees under my belt by the time I was 20, and then spent many years living abroad. I was going to be able to find another job if I needed to. What would it be like if I felt as though this was the only way I knew how to make money? And coming back to what you're saying, Kimfer, it's not exactly the same experience, but it gave me compassion in a way that I hadn't had a felt sense in my cells about what that rhetoric might feel like from the other side of the aisle. I find myself very frustrated again, not so much with the person who's just, I don't like diversity because I don't like different people. I don't like equity because I just want mine, right? It's the people who understand what the benefits of diversity are, why we need equity, why inclusivity is important, who then tell me, I don't speak to my uncle anymore, right? If you're not speaking to your uncle, what the fuck am I supposed to go speak to your uncle at Christmas? I'm trying to be home with my family in Pittsburgh. I got my own uncles and aunts that need to be educated on this, that, or the other. You go talk to your uncle. You helped raise him, right? That compassion that we can't even find from our own family members to sit down and have that productive discourse that you are naming. I want to open it up to our beautiful audience. I see questions coming in into the chat, and I'm sure you want to pick Kimfer and John's brain, renowned DEI leader, legal counsel. What questions do you have? You can either open up your mic and ask, or they will find their way to me in the chat and I will read them aloud. Robin says, is it a skill that we have lost? Or is it that people have decided not to debate and listen to quote unquote both sides of the coin of human rights? How do we have compassion for a stance that dehumanizes others? I really want to know because I hate the divide. It's in my own family. So how do we find compassion for that?
And Lindsey,
Yeah.
this is Robin. I just wanted to add on to that super quickly. I appreciate, I'm sorry about my voice, it's coming back. Appreciate you reading my question. And then also I just wanted to add, I know for me, I feel like if I can't solve the entire thing at once, then what's the point of the conversation? But maybe it's making it more digestible. Maybe it's having a smaller, more focused conversation around one specific thing. I don't know, just maybe that's a thought. I know in dealing with my own family, sometimes I feel like it's a futile conversation if I can't just solve it and bring someone to where I am, which I recognize is, it's a fool's errand to try to do that. But perhaps it is the digestibility and having the conversation more in pieces than trying to fix the world's problems in one conversation.
Yeah, Robin, I think you're right. So one of the things I love telling the story is that so my partner um, had a really interesting multiple conversations because it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen under one conversation, especially if let's say both sides are coming at it like oftentimes what happens in conversations, rather than listening to understand, we talk for you to hear me, right? We talk for you to hear me rather than listen to understand. So there's a bit of like conflict that happens. My nephew voted for Trump the first time. And when we heard, and he's also mixed race and lives in the Midwest, and my partner had a really great conversations with him around like why. Because I think my sister and I, and me also in DEI, and the things that I'm like talking with you, like I also get in my own space, right? Like, what's right? And all of this. And could not have that conversation with him in a way that wasn't heated. And
Mm.
I found it really fascinating watching my partner, him having the conversation with my nephew about my nephew's religious beliefs, why, and all of this. And in those multiple years of this, he, when I say he, our nephew, he got to a point where he's like, I'm really embarrassed that I voted for Trump. And I'm not doing that again. Did his faith change? No. Did his I would say his values shift? Not really. What he didn't quite understand is how they were actually misaligned with Trump because he was being sold what they were selling, right? And so the fact that my partner had the patience of multiple conversations, try to understand his perspective, his religion, his way of thinking, his young, youthful mind. It was, 25, and try to understand like what is it about this branding that's happening out there was attracting him. That allowed them to continue to have this conversation into understanding that I thought it was a really beautiful and also cultivated their relationship in a way that didn't exist before. Um, and I think those are the things like Robin is like, you're right. When you're getting together for a family holiday event, that is not the time where you're going to have solve everything. But there may be a time where you can breach a conversation to then continue to have those conversations bite size at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Thank you all so much. And I'm so sorry I have to jump from this conversation, but I want to know how, I want you to know how invaluable this conversation has been. And I didn't want you to think that I was jumping because I was listening and then left, but I'm listening. I wish I could stay. And thank you all so, so much. This has been really, really thought-provoking and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it would be terrible if it was like Robin Herzer and then she was just like, I'm out. As you were naming Kimfer, what was coming up for me was Loretta J. Ross's
Mm,
model. We talk about this a lot in our trainings. You can check it out on, she has a great TED Talk, Loretta J. Ross. And she talks about the difference between calling out, calling off, calling on, and calling in. And I write about this experience a lot with my own father, who, growing up for me in the Black Christian church, which by all accounts, when I was coming up, was extremely homophobic and transphobic. I used to get into these big arguments with my very loving father. If you ever meet him, this is, a Black Santa Claus of a human. And I couldn't reconcile the idea of a loving God, but for these people. It didn't make sense to me. And, the verses that were being used to justify it, I was like, I feel like you're grasping at straws here. This is talking about birds and a squirrel. You're talking about two humans. Make it make sense. And I spent a lot of time in detention in my Christian high school because apparently you're not supposed to argue with nuns teaching Bible study. Nobody told me that. And so I would come home and have to explain to my parents why I was in detention. And so they were proud of me for standing up for my beliefs. But still, my dad did not have the same belief set. And so we would talk about it until such point that when two of my friends were going through their birthing life creation journey, and this is maybe now, I'm going to say a good 15-ish years later. I was living in Australia at this time. I start getting these letters from my dad's fraternity brothers. Now, if anybody knows anything about Black male fraternities, these are like bastions of like spades and, career connections and, laughing so hard that you're slapping your legs, right? But they're sending me these letters about my friend Betsy, asking me if she's eating enough spinach, or telling me, your dad said she's a marathon runner, and I see that marathon running is not good for conceiving. She might be too below body fat. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So I call my mom and I'm like, I'm getting messages from Uncle Dwayne and Uncle Tony and all these people asking me about Betsy's birthing. And she's like, oh, yeah, I was listening to them on the phone, and they've got a whole prayer group going around Betsy and Leanne getting pregnant. And so I call my dad and I'm like, let's talk about it, because when I grew up, you were very much of the Bible is about Adam and Eve, not about Adam and Steve. And this feels like a complete 180. And he goes, well, you know, at some point, you're meant to learn from your child. And through the years, I listened to you and I started my own prayer journey and asking the question, and what my God, my dad is saying, revealed to me was that I sent my son, and my son gave you about 8 to 9 lessons to live your life by. And one of those was to love everybody as I have loved you. And that turn, still within the context of the faith that is very important to him, it's about his personal journey, his question to his God, and the way that he wants to live his life. It was motivated by, I'm bringing it back to Loretta J. Ross, in that what my dad said to me is, you didn't call me out, you didn't call me off, you called me in to a closer relationship with my stated values. And I found my way there because you gave me the grace that my God would have given me. That is DEI work. It's not to make you wrong. It's not to make myself better. It's to say, this is not you. I know you, and this is not you. Let me give you information. And that's what Kimfer described as well.
Wow. That's a beautiful story. Jeez.
Yeah. And now my dad, is the one like at the Pride March. So don't give up on people if you wouldn't want to be given up on yourself. Is that useful at all?
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
I think the
Sadly,
other Robin left. Can I ask an added question? This is another Robin.
oh, we got double Robins.
Double
Last
Robin!
question.
Party over
Yeah.
here!
Yeah.
As a person who has been having hard conversations, who is also a lifelong, I don't like the word ally or accomplice, but we know what that means. So it's difficult to have those conversations without looking like I'm co-signing on the bullshit. It's difficult to listen to another white-bodied individual who's saying things that I know in my bones to be wrong, to listen with compassion and to be present over time when I know it's wrong. And I've got people I've got to stand up for. I'm like in between my family members. Like some family members are not speaking to each other because of these alignments. I don't know if we have time to talk about it, but I thought it would be kind of another level to the conversation if you want to speak on it. Oh, sigh, Kimfer, sorry.
No,
I'm like,
no,
Melissa,
no.
go
Well,
first.
I look, I'm in the same place you are. I you feel like you feel complicit when you listen to the bullshit, when you know that, when you feel like you're beating your head against the wall, and you know that maybe nothing you say is going to change someone's mind because they're in the cult, and by participating, are you somehow being complicit in what they say and how they feel and what they preach and what they're trying to do. Um, and I get it. I don't really have any solutions for you. I just want to say I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I don't think there is a solution, and I'm actually I think it's individual and specific. Lindsay and Kimfer, I'm interested in your perspective on it, like not relating to me and telling me I'm a good white person, but because that's not the point. Um, but like how do you, I mean, Lindsay, you and I are friends, so I'm like, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like, yeah, I'm just curious how you think about it if you want to share.
Yeah, so actually this conversation comes up quite often for me with when I'm doing client conversations. And so the here are some things that I typically advise. One is there are moments where conversations are going to get nowhere.
Hmm.
It just is. Okay. When it really does feel like you are banging against a brick wall. Those are moments where there's no there's no listening, there is no absorbing. Stop. Those are moments when you need to actually protect your energy, right? It's
That's a
not
good.
going to get anywhere. So those are moments where you do need to stop and know that this is not the right space, time, etc. That doesn't mean that brick wall is going to be there again next time
Yeah.
you speak with that person or individual. The thing is finding the right opportunities to have conversation. If that conversation is happening, don't do it. It's not going to happen, honestly. Too many defenses are up.
Yeah.
I think my thing is when people just give up, saying like, I know that's your stance, this is my stance, we're done,
Mm.
right? And not everyone is, we're not all binary like that. So where are those opportunities to bring it up again? Are there moments where people are more open, right? Those are the times to take into consideration. But I do advise folks when they're having these moments of uh, there are combination of things. You have to protect your energy. You have to protect your mindset as well, because in this work, sometimes people will purposefully and sometimes unintentionally will try to harm you.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
you need to have a space where, like, are you ready to put on some armor to fight that? Or is that going to actually deeply cut you where you can't do the good work continuously? If that's the case, then that job is not for you. Even if
Yeah.
you're the one, there may be someone else, kind of like what I just talked
Yeah.
about the fact that I actually, in that moment, was not the person to talk to my nephew, but my partner was. It it ended up being in that scenario. So you actually may not be the person. That doesn't mean you're not doing your job as an ally. That
Mm.
doesn't mean that you're giving up on that person. It just means that that might not be the job for you with them, right?
Yeah.
And so I know people then go like, but how do I know when I did my enough before I passed it on? I honestly, I think most of us know. Most of us know, like, did I do my effort? Or am I taking the easy way out? And the easy way out would be if you just didn't talk to them at all about it, right? That's easy. Or no longer be friends with them. That would be easy. But the fact that you're trying that opportunity and maybe there's someone else in your friendship groups, in your family groups that might have those conversations differently, I think those are ways that you can continue on with your allyship. It's not for you cannot change everyone. That's your closest relationships. And you
Thank you
can't
so
Yeah.
hold
much.
on to that burden like that either.
Yeah. The only thing I would, and to everything that John and Kimfer just offered, is that in my own practice, and I look for feedback from all those who engage with me, I find that there's sometimes a moment where I shift from show, don't tell, right? The the opportunity is not going to be in the conversation. It's going to be how I attempt to show what experiencing, I love this Buddhist phrase, that to know God, or to know the face of God, look upon every face, right? To live one's life practicing that, show, don't tell, sometimes is the more powerful lesson to leave somebody with.
Yeah, I was just going to say, maybe it's not so much what you say as the fact that you're willing to sit and have the conversation, and maybe that's enough.
Mm,
As we
mm.
are constantly polarized and us versus them, maybe showing that, I can sit here and talk and listen and interact and show that we are all us and you're not a them. Maybe that's enough.
Yeah. Well, friends, it's time for us to call it good, not done, but good. I don't think DEI is the villain, although we could get in another conversation about failings within our industry. And I would be the first to get up on that soapbox and talk about that, because like any industry that is young, there is still more growth for us to attend to as we systemize and standardize the practice. But we leave you with the charge. We leave you with the charge, as Kimfer has charged us, as John has charged us. What is your line? What's the line where you would be prepared to risk it? Is it cutting the DEI program? Is it cutting the diversity from the acronym, the equity from the acronym, the inclusivity from the acronym? Is it renaming it meritocracy? What? I don't know. Go figure it out and report back. See you next month.